The ego is like a shadow that silently follows us throughout our lives. It manifests as a sense of superiority, a need for recognition, and a desire for control. While it is a natural part of being human, the ancient Stoics had a very specific view of the ego, and this view has withstood the test of time. They have much to say about the ego and its danger. Let's explore this theme and learn how the Stoics can teach us to overcome the challenges that the ego presents. But before we delve deep into the topic, I challenge you to like and subscribe to the channel for more relevant and practical content like this. So, let's get started. The ego and its trap. The ego leads us to believe that we are the center of the universe. It's like a mirror that reflects our own image with dazzling brightness. But this excessive light can blind us to the realities of the world around us. As the ego inflates, it creates an illusion of superiority, making us less willing to listen to others and more prone to seeking constant validation. The Stoics warn us about this ego trap. The philosopher Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not become later a problem to yourself." He reminds us that an inflated ego can lead us to become our own enemy because we are constantly in conflict with others and with ourselves. Inflated ego is a source of suffering. When someone sees themselves as superior to others, they live with unrealistic expectations and demand special treatment. When these expectations are not met, suffering and frustration arise. The philosopher Epictetus advised not to worry about what is beyond our control, including how others treat us, to avoid this kind of suffering. An exaggerated ego tends to make people more self-centered, which can harm empathy and consideration for others. The Stoics emphasize the importance of compassion and solidarity with all human beings, and an inflated ego can hinder this connection with others, making the practice of virtue difficult. The illusion of control. One of the most dangerous manifestations of ego is the belief that we can control everything in our lives. The Stoic Epictetus teaches us, "What concerns me is the power of choice, desire, aversion, impulse, and repulsion. In a word, whatever is my own action." He reminds us that many things are beyond our control, and trying to control them only leads to frustration and anxiety. The ego makes us believe we are omnipotent, that we can shape the world according to our desires. But the reality is that the world is uncertain and unpredictable. The Stoics encourage us to focus our energy on what we can control, our own thoughts, actions, and choices. Accepting what is beyond our control frees us from the burden of ego. When the ego makes us believe we can control everything and then things don't go as planned, it leads to frustration and anxiety. We become upset because we expected things to happen according to our desires. The Stoic approach is to accept reality as it is. Instead of fighting what we cannot control, we should focus our energy and effort on what is within our control. This helps us find inner peace. Comparison and envy. The ego tends to lead us to compare our lives, achievements, and possessions with those of others. Imagine that the ego is like a mirror that constantly makes us look at what others have or have achieved. When we compare ourselves to others, we begin to measure our worth based on how we stack up against them. The consequence of this is envy, where we desire what others have and feel bad when we can't match or surpass their accomplishments. Envy often turns into resentment, creating negative feelings towards others, undermining our inner peace. The Stoic philosopher Seneca warns us, "Envy is the most foolish of all passions." He reminds us that our true measure of success should be based on our virtue and wisdom, not on social status or material wealth. The Stoics encourage us to cultivate gratitude. This means appreciating what we have, recognizing that each person has their own path in life. By valuing our own qualities and achievements instead of looking enviously at others, we can find greater satisfaction and contentment. We should appreciate what we have and focus on our own personal development, rather than looking with green ease at what others possess. This helps us reduce the influence of ego in our lives. Fragility of ego. Our ego is often tied to others' opinions of us. When inflated and excessive, The ego makes a person vulnerable and fragile. This means that when we become excessively concerned with our own importance and image, we can easily be negatively affected by the words, actions, or criticisms of others. A feature of ego fragility is that our self-esteem and sense of self-worth largely depend on others' opinions of us. If someone praises us, we feel good. If someone criticizes us, we feel bad. When our self-esteem depends on what others think, we are in a very fragile position. The Stoic Seneca advises us, "What can't be endured doesn't deserve to be tolerated." He reminds us of the importance of building a solid self-esteem based on our own values and principles, rather than depending on external approval. Self-acceptance, with all its imperfections and weaknesses, is crucial. This doesn't mean we should be complacent with our flaws, but rather that we should constantly work to improve and learn from our mistakes without letting them deeply undermine our self-esteem. Criticism is a part of life, and not everyone will agree with us. Accepting the vulnerability of our ego and building internal self-esteem makes us more resilient in the face of criticism and judgment from others. Acceptance and detachment. Finally, the Stoics teach us the importance of acceptance and detachment. Epictetus tells us, "Demand not that events should happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do, and you will go on well." This means that we should learn to accept circumstances that we cannot change and not become attached to ephemeral things like fame and wealth. Detachment is the idea that we should not become overly attached to material things, social status, or anything that can be lost. When we become too attached to such things, we become vulnerable to suffering because everything in life is subject to change. Practicing emotional detachment means not letting our emotions be controlled by external events. Instead, we should maintain calm and serenity, regardless of what happens around us. When we do not attach ourselves to external goals and unrealistic expectations, we put our ego at risk. We should value what is truly important: our virtue, our character, and our ability to live according to reason. As conclusion, our ego is a powerful force in our lives, but it can also be a trap. The teachings of the Stoics offer us a valuable guide to face the challenges that ego presents. By recognizing the illusion of control, avoiding harmful comparisons, strengthening our self-esteem, and practicing acceptance and detachment, we can lead a more balanced and virtuous life. Remember that everyone has an ego, but we are not defined by it. We can choose to cultivate humility, compassion, and wisdom, seeking true happiness.